Well, when we ask, what do you do if you know somebody who is in an abusive relationship? Most people don't have an answer for that question. What do you do if you know somebody who is in an abusive marriage? Most people don't have an answer for that question. And so we have to raise the awareness that the YWCA is here. We have the largest domestic violence shelter in the state of Tennessee. We have counselors. We have a 24-hour hotline that you can call if you're in need of services. People need to know that those resources are available. But even taking it a step further, as men, women need to know that we are advocates. Women need to know that we're on their side, that we're in the game with them, that we're not just gonna brush things off and sweep things under the rug. I know, like when I was younger, in some people's household, there was always, what happens in our house stays in our house.
Welcome to Just Men, a life-changing program that resonates hope as well as encouragement. The program that gives you information and inspiration for the glory of God. I'm your host, Jeff Tate, and thank you for joining Just Men. On today's program, we have a very special guest. This is his first time being on Just Men. Please welcome Shan Foster. Brother Foster, welcome to Just Men.
Oh man, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Oh man, it's our pleasure. And let me say on the onset, you add value to Just Men, and we're just grateful and thankful, man, for you to come and just share this time with us, man, as we embark and dive in what I call the story behind the glory of Shan Foster. But before we dive into that, share a little bit about who is Shan Foster.
Well, I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana during a time when it was the murder capital of the world, unfortunately, and had a mother and a grandmother who worked very hard to make sure that I was grounded in the Word of God, made sure I was in church and really valued church and community and family and those kinds of things, and had a grandfather that was very adamant about making sure I understood how to be a gentleman, how to be respectful, how to pray, how to worship, and keeping things important that are supposed to be important, those kinds of things. And then definitely had other people in my life as well that continued to pour into my life and echo some of those messages that were coming from my mother and grandmother. And so had a chance to leave New Orleans and play basketball at Vanderbilt University, one of the best universities in the world, and in an amazing city like Nashville, Tennessee. And from there played basketball, accomplished a lot of great things. While I was there, had a chance to play professionally, was drafted to the Dallas Mavericks, played professionally for 5 to 6 years, and decided to come back to Nashville and make a difference in the community once I retired from playing ball. And so now I'm just excited to have an opportunity to really use every experience that I've been given, every opportunity that I've been given to now give back, to now not only give back to youth and kids, but to give back to men, and to really make a difference in this community that shows so much love and support for me while I was in school here.
Wow, man, that's beautiful, man. That's a great foundation to build on. I'm telling you, you hit on a lot of things. I want to talk a little bit about your upbringing, particularly in the influence for you to be the gentleman. You use the word gentleman. And what did you see model around you to really gave you the example and reinforced and had an impact on you even after you started playing basketball and even after you develop even now in the community? Talk a little bit about that developmental process.
Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, I never saw my grandpa argue. I lived with them for 6 years and always spent a lot of time around my grandfather, and really enjoyed listening to the wisdom and the stories that he would tell. But as I watched him with my grandmother, he never argued, never raised his voice. It was never aggressive or anything like that, which is contrary to what society teaches you being a man is really all about. And so my grandfather was also a deacon in the church, and so I saw him worship, I saw him pray, I saw him serving, and to me, that's what shaped my idea of what being a young man, being a man was really all about. And it was about serving others. It was about having a servant's heart, and really caring for other people, sacrificing for other people, being well-tempered, knowing how to handle your emotions, knowing how to express your emotions. You know, my grandpa was someone, you know, who was always telling me and our family how much he loved us, how much he cared for us, you know, that he was going out and working to make sure that he could provide for us and those kinds of things. And so that really shaped a lot of my behavior, a lot of my morals and values and things that I believe dearly, even as an adult now. You know, and I'm married, and my wife, you know, Ariel, she's the most amazing person, most important person in my entire world. And, you know, my job, you know, as a husband, you know, is to treat her the way that God treats me. And I got that from watching my grandfather. You know, he was very adamant about making sure that I understood that. And so that's how I try to treat her every single day, you know, understanding that, you know, at the end of the day, I don't deserve to be loved in that way, but she loves me anyway, you know. And so my job is to extend what I've been given. So when I've been given grace, that's what I extend. When I've been given love, that's what I extend. That's my duty. That's my privilege as a man of God, but also as a husband in my household. And so it really does shape, you know, who I am today. It also shapes, you know, the message that I give back, you know, because I feel a tremendous pull to make sure that I'm helping to teach the next generation of young boys how to value and respect women and girls on their journey to becoming great men. You know, sometimes we forget how important it is to value and respect other people. Sometimes we get so, you know, egotistical or even selfish. You know, nowadays everybody's taking selfies. It's all about us. You know, I got an iPhone, we got the iMac computer, we got the iPad and this. It's all about me, me, me. And so, you know, how do we teach this young generation that, you know, some of this has to be about others first. You know, some of this has to be about being selfless. And how do you respect other people? How do you care for other people? How do you give the love that you've been given, and those kinds of things? So a lot of what I do now as it relates to our work with the men, it really is a part of who I am, and it's who I've been since I lived with my grandparents at a very young age.
Wow, that's beautiful. Talk a bit about your program and this giving and this service mentality that you have, and what reinforces that, and what gives you sort of the wind beneath your wings to keep doing it over and over. Because when you start dealing with men, a lot of times it's like climbing out Mount Everest, because there's so many generational curses, and there's so many things that a culture in terms of how you are to be a man. So when you're fighting against that, a lot of times it takes more than one person to chip away, you know, those images of what a man feels that he is. So talk a bit about your program of service, and how do you do that day after day after day, and what is the drive and the passion that keeps burning inside of you so that you continue to persevere?
Sure. So I'm a senior director at the YWCA of Nashville and Middle Tennessee, and you know, we are the largest provider of domestic violence services in the state of Tennessee. We have a 53-bed shelter that unfortunately is full every single day of the week because of how big this problem of violence against women and girls is in Nashville. You know, most people don't realize that Metro Nashville Police respond to a call every 20 minutes. That's more than 26,000 calls every single year. We're in the top in the country for sex trafficking. You know, nationally, 1 out of every 4 women experience domestic violence. 1 out of every 5 experience sexual assault and abuse. And so there's this violence that is happening, and we see it, and we hear about it on the news, we hear about it on the radio, we see it on TV. But it's really this culture that's behind it that allows that violence to happen in the first place. You know, if you think about when we were kids, and you see a young boy and a young girl, and they're playing, and the young boy hits the young girl, and the girl starts crying and goes and finds an adult, where in most places around our country, most adults tell that young girl that he only hit you because he likes you. And most adults don't even go and address the young boy. And what we've taught that young boy by not addressing him is that if you like her, it's okay if you hit her. That message, along with so many others in our society and in our culture, just reinforces that women are of less value. And so when you create a construct that says that women are less value, then you have opportunity for abuse. You have opportunity for this violence to happen. And so what we do is we try to engage men and boys. Amend is all about engaging young men and boys to end this violence before it happens. So we talk about this culture. We talk about how we talk to one another. Why is it so important to put down another person by calling them something associated with a woman? That's wrong. We all know it's wrong. It's something that is not okay, but we do it anyway. Why? We talk about those things. How do we view relationships? A lot of times, young men and boys, we view relationships based on our history, what we saw other people doing, our experiences. So if we saw dad being abusive or being aggressive towards mom, then we think that's okay as well. And it's really not. And we don't even realize how sometimes our language and our behavior that isn't necessarily violent can have a violent effect. And so we, in some ways, contribute to the violence that is happening. You know, I know there's a statistic that says that 85% of men are good men. That means only 15% of men are batterers or abusers, bad guys. But it begs the question, how is it possible that 1 out of every 4 women can experience domestic violence when there's 85% good men in the world? How are we allowing that to happen? How are we allowing 1 out of every 6 young girls to be raped or sexually assaulted during their 4 years in college, and there's 85% good men? How? And a large part of that is because men haven't been a part of the solution. You know, we all get upset if we were to hear our young daughter come in and say that this is what happened to me when I was walking down the street, or this is what my boyfriend did at school. We get upset. We want to go do something about it. Well, Amend is an opportunity for us to do something about it before it gets to that point. So we're helping men to recognize their place as role models, their place as mentors. So how do we look at, you know, how are we talking to young boys? How are we holding each other accountable for our actions, for our thoughts, for our words, for our deeds, so that this kind of violence is not occurring in our city?
Wow, man, that's beautiful. I know that you and I talked a little bit off the set in terms of some of the things that you're doing to nationwide as well as locally to raise the awareness. And how important is awareness in terms of this process? Because I know many times when women are going through domestic violence, the thing is that they want to keep it secret. Another thing is people say, well, just leave that relationship. And so how do you, what are you educating people on in terms of that awareness, and how do you recognize that potentially you're going down that path of being an abuser or being someone who is callous to the sensitivity of women, and are there signs that you can see in a young man to where you need to start addressing now, since you start talking about awareness, prevention, before it escalates to the level it turns into violence?
Absolutely. I think it's so critical to understand that this kind of violence is about power and control. It's not about just the violence. It's about power and control. One person having power in any area of their life over the other person. And so you see it at young ages, you see it even in adults, where it's not always physical. It could be mental, it could be financial, you know, it could be, you know, something as simple as trying to control what a person wears or doesn't wear. You know, those kind of things. It's all about power and control. And the more that we can raise that awareness so that people understand that it's about power and control, then we also are talking about raising awareness to the resources that are available. You know, one of the things we talk about with some guys, we ask the question, you know, what do you do if you have an erection that lasts more than an hour? Well, most people will say, well, you call a doctor. Something's wrong, you call a doctor, right? Well, when we ask, what do you do if you know somebody who is in an abusive relationship? Most people don't have an answer for that question. What do you do if you know somebody who is in an abusive marriage? Most people don't have an answer for that question. And so we have to raise the awareness that the YWCA is here. We have the largest domestic violence shelter in the state of Tennessee. We have counselors. We have a 24-hour hotline that you can call if you're in need of services. People need to know that those resources are available. But even taking it a step further, as men, women need to know that we are advocates. Women need to know that we're on their side, that we're in the game with them, and that we're not just gonna brush things off and sweep things under the rug. I know, like when I was younger, in some people's household, it was always, you know, what happens in our house stays in our house, and we sweep things under the rug. Well, in church, one of the things I heard people say was that you can't heal that we don't reveal. And so how do we start talking about these things? We got to talk about the stories, you know, and our inability to talk about what is happening is part of what's causing some women to feel like they can't share what's actually happening in our lives. You know, we were talking about the fact that Ezekiel Elliott right now just got a 6-game suspension for being abusive towards his girlfriend or fiance. And there's so many people that think that because he's such a great football player that it's impossible for him to do this kind of act. Well, we got athletes at every single level. We got athletes in middle school and high school, and there's best players on every single team. So are you saying that those, because they're an athlete, that excuses their bad behavior? But when we as men, and you think about being a father, you think about being a friend to other women, when we as men stand up and say that that's not possible for those men to do that because of their elite status, what we're signaling to the women in our lives is, I can't trust you. Because if this was something that happened to me, depending on who did it and how valuable they are in your eyes, you're not gonna believe me. And we see that over and over and over again. And so what happens is you have a number of people who refuse to come forward, not because they don't want out, not because they don't want, you know, there to be justice, not because they wanna be in that situation, but because there's a lot of pressure that comes from that. So how do we start getting men to ask the men, what have you done? Instead of asking the girls, what have they done? So, you know, when we talk about social media, you know, there's some guys that we talk to say, yo, they shouldn't be able to dress like that. What did they expect? Well, what does how she's dressed have to do with your perception? She's still a human being. She's still a valuable individual, regardless of what she has on. But if you see her as a sex symbol just because of what she has on, you're the problem, not her. And so how do we start having that kind of dialogue? You know, we one of the college trainings that we did, we had one of the players come up and ask, you know, I just don't understand why women have to dress provocatively. I don't get that. And so we asked him the question. We said, you know, well, have you ever raped anybody before? He said, no. Have you seen attractive women before? He said, yes. Have you seen attractive women that have been dressed provocatively? Yes. Did you rape them? No. Did you abuse them? No. Why not? Because I have morals. I have values. I'd never do that to a woman or a girl. And we said, exactly. And that's the same expectation, that's the same bar that should be set for every man, regardless of whether he's a politician, an athlete, or what have you.
Wow, that's good. You know, you're hitting down on some of the things that we in Just Men have addressed about character and about integrity, and how it seems to be a different standard in terms of our identification of what is character and what is integrity. In other words, when you have someone who is a high profile, whether they're a high profile athlete or whether they're a doctor, a lawyer, or in some political position, that they seem to get a pass because of their ability to perform, their ability in their profession or their occupation, their ability to perform at the highest level. Therefore, that's a sign of character. That's a sign of credibility. And so therefore, like you said, when women do encounter the other side of these individuals, then there is a credibility issue in terms of that as well. How can I approach the media or approach anyone else because of look how they've elevated, they worship almost, they've created this idol. And therefore it creates a different standard. And I mean, that's even in the 85% to where it doesn't necessarily escalate into violence or abuse, but it's like it's a train that is running in a direction, and all it takes is just one track to be moved, and all of a sudden they're in that situation and go, wow, I can't believe I'm there. So I say that to say that how do you start getting behind the scene and start educating about the profile the different standard that we use when it comes to athleticism. Now, I want to hit that because, you know, Tennessee, Nashville is a big area in terms of athleticism. And many times you see, like you mentioned, the athletes that seems to get a pass, may not get prosecuted, right, in terms of the criminal aspect of it, but still there's a culture that's underneath this to say it's okay. Now, you were an athlete, and I imagine that there was many opportunities that you've had to dive into things that wasn't lined up with the things you model and things you've seen in your grandfather, the things you read in the Word, but you stayed with the Word. How do you do that? And how do you bring that part to the table when it comes to involving, engaging our young men about how do you really exemplify character? What is character? Is it how many times you hit a three-pointer? Is it how many times you run the ball and score a touchdown? Is it how many times? Those things are measures, but it has nothing to do necessarily with who you really are, especially when no one is watching. Talk a little bit about that aspect.
Well, I think it's the same as, you know, what I was taught when I was playing basketball, that the one thing that coaches never want to have to coach is effort. You know, when you can have the guy that's the worst on the team playing against the guy that's the best on the team. But if that guy that's the worst plays with more effort and energy than the guy that's the best, he has a chance to win. And it's the same thing as it relates to character. In order for us to have an opportunity to be great men, we got to put in the effort. That's what it boils down to. And so with that comes accountability. So we talk a lot about accountability. You know, when I was in college, one of the first things I did when I got to Vanderbilt University was to go to the church and ask Bishop Walker, Mount Zion Baptist Church, to be my mentor, because I wanted somebody that was going to be able to hold me accountable. I knew the way that I was raised. I didn't know what life was going to be like as an athlete on a college level or a professional level. So I need somebody in my life that is going to hold me accountable for being the kind of man that I need to be. I got coaches, I got people in my life who are committed to me being the best basketball player. But do I have people in my life that's committed to me being the best man that I need to be? And sometimes as men, that becomes uncomfortable. We don't really want that. We want the freedom and the flexibility to go out there and dibble and dabble and do things that we want to do. But there's a price that we pay for that. And so even when I was in school, I had friends, one of my closest friends who I was in class with one day, and I was tired. And I was just gonna go to sleep. I'm an athlete. The teacher's probably not gonna tell me anything. I'm gonna go to sleep. She tapping me on my shoulder. Excuse me, get up. If your mama was here, you wouldn't be asleep. You need to get up and get this lesson like I am. You know, having people in is so critical because we're not perfect. We're gonna make mistakes. And there's nothing wrong with you making mistakes as long as you correct it. And so even as we're talking about teaching young men how to value and respect women and girls. You know, we was talking about this with one guy, and the guy says, you know, I'm driving down the street. I don't even want to look at a woman no more, you know, after hearing the message. And we told him it's not about, you know, not finding women attractive. You're supposed to find women. There's nothing wrong with you finding a woman attractive. But there is something wrong with you being disrespectful. And so that's where the line is. And so just being able to catch ourselves in some of the language that we use, simple phrases like, yo, you throw like a girl. What are we really saying there? You know, are you really insulting girls? Because that's what you're doing. That's not a compliment to girl. You throw like a girl, that's not a compliment. What we're really saying is that women are less value, and so you throw like a woman. I'm gonna use that to put you down. Correcting little things like that can go a long way as it relates to changing this culture that we're talking about. You know, I was at a sports bar watching a football game one day, and it was so interesting. There's a bunch of guys at this table, and the guys saw this commercial that came on, and it was typical conversation that you hear about a commercial, and there's a sexy, attractive woman in the commercial, and you hear these guys talking about what they would love to do with the girl and all that kind of stuff, disregarding other people that were around them. There was a woman that was sitting at the table next to them. She had her kids that were there with them. They all hearing this conversation. And then a waitress walks over And they start saying the same things about this waitress that they were saying about the woman on TV. And I sat back just to see if there was going to be a guy in the midst of them that would correct the behavior, that would say, hey man, that's not cool. We don't need to talk about women and girls like that. Nobody said anything. And we don't even understand how much of an impact that has even on the other people around us. Because every time we allow a woman or a girl to be disrespected, to be devalued, to be objectified in our presence, what we're really doing is making it okay for people to treat the women and girls in our life just like that. But as men, we get upset. You know, we get real upset when a guy tries to holler at our mom. When a guy tries to holler at our daughter in front of us, we get real upset about that, especially if they're disrespectful. But while we're sitting here watching the game and we feel like that we're in this all guys environment, oh, we just let it rip. That's a part of the culture that allows this violence to happen in the first place. So that's what we're looking at trying to change. And it's about putting in that effort of holding myself to a higher standard, but also having people around me that are going to hold me accountable. And there's nothing wrong with that. You see, when we talk about sports, we're okay with people holding us accountable in our sport. We'll go watch film all day and get criticized all day, and we'll accept that. But if you come to me and say, hey man, I heard what you said about that girl, or I saw you talking to your girlfriend disrespectfully over there, man, I think we need to talk about that. That's not cool. There's another way to show your frustration. That's not how you do that. Now we're uncomfortable. Why? Which one is more important? What we're doing on a football field or what we're doing in life? And so our message is very simple. We got to teach these young men how to be better fathers, how to be better husbands, how to be better friends, how to be better sons. That's what it's all about, because that's how you win. I know too many people who are quote unquote successful, but failures. We can teach our kids how to win in sports. We got to start teaching them how to win in life.
In life.
That's what this is all about.
Wow, in life. And it's amazing, discipleship. That's one of the areas even Christ would elevate, is building disciples. The word says they'll know us by the love that we share with one another. You talk about service. You talk about sacrifice. I mean, the word talks about that we are to give ourselves, you know, as a living sacrifice unto the Father. It's holy and acceptable, which is our reasonable service. And you said a lot, and we got to have you back on, because I want to dive more, especially in the part about our words and our lyrics. There's many soundtracks and there's things out that made it okay to degrade women in there, and how that escalates and feeds that spirit, a spirit that is contrary to the Spirit of God, and it's a spirit that brings bondage and it brings hell to a large degree. So, brother, you've blessed me, man. You've blessed me with your words. You're definitely, I can see the passion in you, man. I can see the passion. Last words of encouragement, man, that you have in terms of men, in terms of domestic violence, in terms of awareness. Bring us home, man.
Well, I would love for everybody that's listening to go to our website, www.ywcanashville.com. Get the resources. Hold other people accountable. At the end of the day, we can win all day in our jobs, in our professions. We got to win in life. That's what matters most. You know, when you see people on their deathbed, nobody ever says, I wish I would have made more money. I wish I would have wrote more books. I wish I would have played another down. They always say, I wish I would have spent more time with people.
Wow.
We got to teach each other how to win in life. That's what a man is all about.
Wow. You're God's best, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me.
Man, stay focused. Wow.